Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Voice of Olympus, I'm proud to present Living Theurgy. And I have with me three of my esteemed colleagues, Theurgy Saul, Tony Mierzwicki, Brandy Williams, and Clio Ajana. And right now we're just going to catch up because life has been busy for all of us and we've been off doing our own thing. So I'll go in the order in which people came into the room. We'll start with Tony. Tony, how are things with you? What have you been up to?
Things are going well for me. I'm still doing workshops for that coven in LA that already has a Hecatian focus but wants to make things more authentic. That's been taking up a lot of my time. I'm still doing book reviews, having troubles with Wi-Fi at the moment, so I haven't actually scheduled any interviews. I've got 3 interviews that I have to run with various authors, and I hope to do those in the next few weeks. I'm just going to do them all very quickly, but that's pretty well it for me. And I think other people are doing far more stuff that's far more exciting than I am.
But collectively, you've done a lot of stuff and it's always been impressive. And I've learned a lot from you. And I'm always very honored to focus on you and your work because people can benefit from it. And it certainly contributes to the collective knowledge of theurgists now and henceforth.
Thank you.
Brandy Williams, I've missed you so much. I can't even. How are you?
I made a special effort to be here today because I've missed you guys too. And I love the topic that we want to talk about. But hey, I have a magical journey to India. It's finally out and you can find it on Amazon, ebook, and an extremely expensive physical book just because, or get the ebook. So I'm very, very happy that I finally was able to issue it. I have a book review on my Pathos blog, Star and Snake, from a fellow Georgian. She did a book on weather magic, and it's fantastic. I really love the book. And that's pretty much it for me. I'm slogging away at writing my next book. And it's, I figured out that I don't write books that exist, if you know what I mean. I write books that are about something that no one has written about. So it takes a while to like think it through and to research it. So I'm slow, but I'm really close to a draft. So got my fingers crossed.
Well,
Can I just make a comment? Can I just make a comment? Brandy, I think what you're doing is very important. So many books out there are rehashes of stuff that's already out there, just reworded. So for you to be doing something fresh and new and exciting is really, really important and much appreciated.
and For the Love of the Gods, which is one of my favorite books, you brought theurgy to life. You showed the golden thread by bringing us into the lives of theurgists as people rather than abstract philosophical figures. And that is quite an accomplishment. So I'm looking forward to all your books. And when you're ready, let's do a special about the book you just published.
Oh, sure. I'd love to do that. I also wanted to say that I want to do another Witchcraft and Theurgy interview because I've just sort of reconnected with Frater Barabbas, and he's doing this really wonderful. Yeah. Maybe Cleo, maybe you let's get together offline. Maybe you can reconnect me with him because it's been a few years since I was able to talk to him. But he's doing some really lovely book. I've asked for my one of his books for my birthday, Sacramental Theurgy for Witches. It's like, yes, we have to have him on the show.
Definitely, let's do it. Once you know what your schedule is, talk to me. I'll schedule something. It probably won't be during our normal recording time, but we'll get it done as fast as possible.
Great.
And happy early birthday or late birthday. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Really, yeah.
Happy early birthday. And Clio Ajana, you're
Yes.
you're one of the busiest people right now that I know. So what's been going on with you?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier about the going to the conferences, only one of them was a magical conference. That was Mystic South. And that was fantastic this year. This year's has been really good for conferences. And Sacred Space was really good in the March, April, but this one in July, there was something nice about seeing so many new people who are coming into just awareness and who are just fascinated, not just by the craft in general, but also by theurgy and just the ritual space, and it was wonderful. So I felt really heartfelt, and after having some time away on a major project for work, I'm going back. My big thing right now has been continued writings for The Wild Hunt, looking partially at non-theatrical things, but I'm going back to, I had a big sign that I need to do a nice large project around the muses. And since I'm in devotion to the muses, that's a big thing. And actually it's with um, a book called Dictée, which
Yeah.
sadly the person who wrote the book has as usual with really good books, the person has passed away. But and I thought, okay, this will be nice, but it's going along the lines of the various muses for those things. I thought, why not? This will be a great, interesting project. So I don't have much else happening. There's a lot of stuff in the future, and I am just very pleased when I'm meeting a lot of new people. For example, Brandy talked about um, Frater Barabas, and um, and it's interesting because some people you don't see for a while, then all of a sudden they're out. You know, they're like they're suddenly popping up as names, and his is one that has popped up again recently, and it hasn't been on the radar. So yes, happy to help you with that. Um, and I'm just glad to see you guys. I'm glad to see anybody at this point. So
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you made it, and I'm honored that all of you have made it today. Something I wrote has been published, just came out in the past couple of months. It's in an anthology called Weird Time, and it's about temporal anomalies. So I shared
ooh,
my personal experiences with temporal anomalies in my own life. And now I'm waiting for our mutual project to get a progress report on what's going on with that. And I'm looking for new projects to get involved with. I have a group of about a dozen people who meet monthly at my home now. And
oh, wonderful.
I'm getting together organizations as well, and we're forming connections for another project. So I'm in a building and organizing phase. And like Brandy, I like sharing information that hasn't been written about. So there's some really obscure theosophical esoterica that I've been pursuing, that I have a lot of information and a lot of insight into. I don't know if anybody else in the world would be interested in it, but I have a strong desire lately to share it. So that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm organizing my thoughts and see if I can publish it somewhere.
Well, you know, Hercules, as long as one person, meaning you, is interested, there's always going to be someone else out there who they might not be interested in first, but your passion will carry you along. I mean, I was in a meeting earlier today. It's like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but you're passionate about it, so I'll like it. And I kind of feel that way every time I come on here. I get something interesting, and it's, you know, it's like we're all ready for to taste something new. So I wouldn't worry about that. You will find somebody.
Thank you for
Lots
your
of people.
kind words. I will seek, and hopefully I will find. And thank you for your encouraging words. Um, Today we're going to be discussing what happened at the Olympics recently, where there was a pageant in honor of Dionysus, which is appropriate because
Mhm.
Dionysus is an ancient Greek god, and the Olympics are an ancient Greek event that's been born in modern times. But many people who are of Abrahamic tradition believe that it was a mockery of the Last Supper. And this is ironic because a lot of books have been coming out recently about how the Last Supper is ripped off from the Dionysian mysteries, and there's a lot of other biblical things that are New Testament, especially, that seem to come from Plato and Homer and all sorts of other ancient authors. So I haven't had a chance to see this. I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't had a chance to actually see the pageant and hear the words or translations of the words. So I rely on you, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. And we'll start.
Sorry, you just cut out there. What was that?
Oh, we'll start with Tony on Dionysus in the Olympics.
Would I be able to finish? The reason is that I've actually written a blog and I've covered pretty well the whole ceremony in detail. So if I cover everything I have, like there won't be much left. So I thought if Brandy and Clio can go first, I can cover the bits that they miss.
Okay.
Well, I'll go first then, because I think I'm the one who, I was actually at a conference when that came out. And so what I saw first were the complaints
Ah.
about this must be the Last Supper. And I'm thinking, then when I started to look at even still images, I'm going, that's not the Last Supper. That's very clearly, not only is it clearly Dionysus, just the, surrounded and in painting, this was not a perverted celebration of, Jesus as, well, as was just said, the people very kindly of those of the Abrahamic faith. And to me, it actually reflected an ignorance both of art and also just of other religions, an awareness of other religions besides Christianity in the world. And that, why would you think that something that's held in a different country that is known for its reverence of art would clearly there's a difference. So my question for Tony, actually, when we get to that part, would be, is it just an inherent bias against non-Abrahamic ideals and images and artwork? To me, it was very, very clear, even just looking at stills and other images, that this was not that it was very clearly Dionysus. It made sense to me. And I'm just wondering if it's because of a bias, an inherent bias religiously, that has a block preventing ordinary individuals from seeing this clearly is not the Last Supper. That would be my main question, and I'll pass on to others. But I just thought, to me, one of the things as theurgists, when we see things very clearly, and I guess hopefully for those who are watching this and others, this just brings into question one of the reasons why speaking out about theurgy and other topics, no matter how obscure they might seem, is necessary for those individuals who don't get it because they have not heard about it, and never occurs to them that it could be something different than the very narrow point of view that they may have.
That's very good points and very good questions. Thank you very much. Brandy?
I saw the ceremony.
Yay!
I think I'm the only person who did. So I want to tell you my experience of watching the Olympic opening ceremony, right? So the camera comes up on this drag show that's happening, right? On this end. And then there's this semi-naked blue guy. And I look at Ted and I go, are you seeing the semi-naked blue guy? The same, what do you suppose this is? And he is lying on a platter with fruit hanging off of him. And then he begins to sing. His name is Philippe Catherine, and he is singing his song Nu, which is nude. And of course, he's singing in French, so none of us have any idea what he's singing, but he's very sincere about it. There's a woman behind him who's wearing a sort of halo kind of thing. And there are also other figures around him. And I want to say to you, Clio, you saw Dionysus. I looked at him and I had no idea. And so later I hear it's supposed to be Dionysus. I'm like, really? Because he's not vibing Dionysus to me. He's blue. He's not purple. He's got fruit. He doesn't have vines. There's no obvious Dionysus imagery here. And it turns out that what Philippe Catherine was portraying was a painting of Bacchus. Let's just say Bacchus and Dionysus are related, but I'm a splitter, not a lumper. There's a difference between Dionysus and Bacchus. I'm like, okay. And the painting of Bacchus is supposed to be about a feast, and it does actually reference the Last Supper in the painting, right? So when people looked at it and said, "Oh, I see the Last Supper," they're actually seeing something there. But But here's the thing, it actually was kind of meant to be in your face. Like, he really did kind of mean to be a little bit confrontational. The drag queens and the, the semi-naked blue guy, and this reference, whatever the reference was, it definitely punched a button, though. I started seeing stuff in the press about, okay, this is anti-Christian. I'm like, really, huh? You guys didn't like the drag show or what? So then it came out, and I'm sure Tony will give us like detail on that. But there were a couple of things that I thought, and the first thing was, it was not clear symbology. I mean, I kind of faulted for that. I didn't see Dionysus, nor did I see the Last Supper, right? It was not particularly well transmitted. I did see the semi-naked guy, and I looked at I got the window where you could go look at stuff online afterwards. So I listened to the performance again, and I saw a translation of the lyrics, and the lyrics say, "We are all naked. When we are naked, there's no rich, there's no poor. We're all just people together," which I think is a lovely sentiment, and it belongs to the Olympics. But I have to say, kudos to the French for being willing to like push the limit there on international TV. Then I saw comments from French people like, "Oh, look, it's Philippe Catherine. How wonderful. How will the billions of people around the world who are watching this ever understand what he means?" And I think the short answer was, we won't. It did not come across. So that was it was highly entertaining, and I thought it was a great topic for us as theurgists, and I want to, we can launch from that into our own relationships to Dionysus. But it was a very interesting experience, and I'm really looking forward to Tony's overview. Tony does such a beautiful job of collecting information and then presenting it, so I'm really looking forward, Tony, to what you have to say.
Me too.
Okay, I've written a very long, extensive blog on the whole thing, and I'd take up the whole program if I was to cover everything in it. So I'm just going to pick out the eyes in it. But I wanted to point out the Last Supper, which was produced by Leonardo da Vinci between 1495 and 1498, it's one of the most recognizable paintings in the world. And it's inspired many other artists. It's been copied and adapted over the years. So people look at it and they recognize it. Now, Brandy, you referred to a particular woman. She was the DJ in the sketch. Her name's Barbara Butch. And there was an Instagram story which has since been taken down. So much has been taken down regarding the whole event. She said that she played the Greek god of the sun, Apollo. And I think that that's a mistake, because the thing is, she's wearing a halo with seven rays coming out of it, which is one of the representations of Helios. So she basically got it right that she was playing a sun god, but she said Apollo, whereas she should have said Helios. And she also referenced a particular painting, and this is a painting that you privately sent to us. It was Jan van Bilert's painting The Feast of the Gods, which is displayed in a French art museum. And that particular painting, if you look at it, it was produced, it's actually a product of what was happening in the 16th and 17th centuries, where there were many paintings featuring Dionysus or Bacchus and scenes of godly excess. So the thing is that that particular painting was the model for the tableau which we saw in the opening ceremony. And that painting was produced in between 1635 and 1640. It's superficially similar to the Last Supper, but if you compare what we saw in the tableau with what was happening in the Last Supper, you have a Jesus figure in the middle, and you have 6 apostles on one side and 6 apostles on the other side. There were way more people than that. If they wanted to copy the Last Supper, they would have had 6 drag queens on one side, 6 drag queens on the other side, and left it at that, just to make it really obvious. So, but the thing is that the Feast of the Gods is much less well known, and most people don't have much of an education in art. So obviously they look at something that's vaguely like the Last Supper, then they're going to assume that it's the Last Supper. So the Feast of the Gods actually depicts a gathering of gods at a banquet on Mount Olympus, and it celebrates the marriage of the Argonaut warrior Peleus and the Nereid or sea nymph Thetis. And interestingly, the fruit of their union would be Achilles. And Achilles was the central character in Homer's Iliad. So we get an idea of just how important that particular scene was. And so in the foreground of the painting, Dionysus or Bacchus is shown lying on the ground, dangling a bunch of grapes over his mouth while a satyr dances on the table. So I don't think I need to cover the story of Dionysus. We all know that. But the thing that's really interesting, and this actually what was new to me, and I have to thank Georgi Mishev, who tipped me onto it, that a number of scholars have actually been interested in the issue of transvestism in ancient Greece. And so because transvestism was so prevalent in ancient Greece, it actually shows how appropriate it was to use Dionysus in a scene that fosters inclusion and diversity. So the three scholars who I've come across that are focusing on this particular issue are Dr. Alison Surtees, who's an associate professor at the University of Winnipeg, and there's Dr. Margaret Christina Miller, who's an archaeologist and professor of classical archaeology at the University of Sydney, which is my old stomping ground. And there's also Christiane Caruso. And I couldn't find what institution she was associated with, but I'd assume that she would be at least a PhD, and she focused a lot on Dionysian cross-dressing. So there's a series of vases that date back to between 510 and 470 BCE, and they featured bearded men in costumes. So they wear the long chiton, himatian mitra boots, they carry lyres, drinking vessels, and sometimes parasols, and wear earrings. So Professor Margaret Miller has argued that these men are wearing women's clothing and that there's a cultic connection between Dionysus and the vases. So Christine Caruso has collected other images depicting other Dionysian cross-dressers, that is, Maenads dressing up as satyrs and satyrs dressing up as Maenads. And she has convincingly argued the cross-dressing was a part of Dionysian cultic activity rather than theatrical scenes. So Professor Alison Surtees sees Dionysus as a complex-willed liminal deity, thoroughly Greek, but he's seen as a foreigner who unleashes madness through the vine. But he's also a civic deity with cultic activity in the heart of the city. He's a god strongly associated with the phallus, and yet he has a special connection to female worshippers not shared by any other male deity. So basically, what I deduced from all that was that the Paris Olympics opening ceremony was a colorful interpretation of a Dionysian gathering celebrating diversity and inclusion, and it's perfectly in keeping with what we know about ancient Greek practices. So when you drill into it, there's a hell of a lot there encoded in it. But because so many people don't have a background in ancient Greek practices, they don't have a background in classical art, they're just going to jump to various conclusions. So the solution is more education. Don't cut funding to educational institutions, but let people get more educated. So that's just a summary of what I wrote in my blog.
Wow, thank you. That was very detailed and very illuminating.
And Tony, I will second the whole thing about education, because I think one of the sad parts, even when you haven't looked at something and you hear nothing but the comments, it overshadows knowing, as someone who in worship with Dionysus, it's like, okay, it didn't seem unusual. So Brandy, you were saying you saw it. Yeah, it didn't seem unusual. It made perfect sense to me. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
what else? And I agree that some of it is art, but I also still firmly agree that looking at it, if your first inclination is to say this is horrible because it doesn't fit your narrow worldview, whatever that is, as opposed to thinking, well, gosh, this is a different country, a different culture. There has to be a logical reason why someone is doing this. It didn't seem like there was much effort put into finding out what it could be at first. And that was what bothered me more than anything else. And I thank you. That was a beautiful rendition for your blog post. And yes, there should be more education. I I wonder how many people, even with that though, would still insist on that it must be an appropriation instead of the other way around.
You know, a lot of people, when you present them with contradictory evidence, just dig their heels in. They're going to say, no, it's a blatant attack on Christianity. It's obviously the Last Supper. And that's it. You can't reason with people, or some people, I should say. And there are also some people who wake up in the morning and they look for something they can be offended by, rather than looking into it. And as you amazingly pointed out, that people should look into things, learn more about things, rather than just jump into conclusions.
People aren't interested, again, as was said here, in things that will contradict the reality. One of the groups I have on Facebook, and I have tons of books on Facebook, tons of groups rather on Facebook, it's called the Temple of Hercules and Athena. And I started publishing there links to all the new scholarship that's been done, showing that if there was cultural appropriation, it happened in the opposite way than scholars had assumed. Scholars had assumed that the Greeks appropriated the material from the Hebraic mythology and material, but it turns out to have been the other way around. And now there's a lot of disciplines that demonstrate that quite powerfully. And once I started posting those things there, nobody responded to any comments. Not one comment on any of this material, and I did it for weeks. So I just stopped doing it because I was wasting my time. So I pursued this knowledge on my own, but I couldn't share it there. So I'm giving the group a rest, and then I'll reinvent it at some later point and do something with it.
I'm curious, when you said before you had started to post it, obviously it had an initial focus. And given the deities involved, was there active conversation about a variety of topics before you started posting?
Well, what I did was I set up like a Facebook temple. I had a torch with fire that I post once a week or something on the in my system. Hercules is the sun, Athena's the moon, so that's Sunday and Monday. So they're the luminaries, and then the other gods fall into the days of the week, and it's a whole complicated system. If you're interested, I have a group on Facebook that, like a calendar, keeps going around and around, and every now and then I'll flesh it out a little bit more until I eventually get the whole thing up there in some form or fashion. So I had there in the temple, I had Homeric hymns, Orphic hymns, different translations. I had whenever they find the temple, because Hercules was popping up, his head was popping up, his temples were popping up. So I'd have things like that. And those are the type of things people liked and responded to and reacted to. But when the scholarship started coming out and I started sharing it, no reaction at all, nothing. Crickets chirping on Facebook without making any noise. So a lot of people are not ready for things like that, you know, even if they're quote unquote pagans, I guess, because the group was mostly pagans. Who else would be in a group called Temple of Hercules and Athena?
And to me that is interesting because I one of the things that I enjoy about Mystic South is that it includes a papers area. And I forget what the exact acronym is, pagans, something academic, but the idea that there are people who are interested, who are either academics or citizen academics, and they have more interest than just something that involves going to a ritual or doing a ritual and going shopping and having fun, that there are actually people who want to discuss these topics more seriously, like we do here. And as you said, posting links and things, it saddens me that it doesn't continue with greater frequency offline, you know, well, not offline, but in groups like what you have, because that's a perfect example of going against stereotype by having something where people can actually discuss those ideas. So
People like when the blessings, I do blessings that are tied to the days of the week and to the planets. Those are very popular. People message me off the beaten path and, you know, tell me how that changed the circumstances they were in or made them feel. And and things like that. People seem to like little snippets of information. They seem to like funny things every now and then. And I use Facebook mainly to point to the podcasts and the YouTube videos that we do. So it's, and whatever you guys or other people I work with send me about what you're doing, I'll make sure that it gets out there. But that's pretty much what I'm on Facebook for. But it's been an interesting education. Facebook now, they're telling me that my stuff violates community standards. So I don't know, they don't explain what violates community standards. So I'm starting to look for other places beyond Facebook where I'll stay on Facebook, because again, I have an audience there, and people are used to finding me there. But if I'm going to have difficulties every time I post something, then I need to be someplace else and, you know, set up a new presence.
That leads me to a question, actually, Hercules, because we were talking about Dionysus, and he manifested, right? I mean, we're theurgists, and we take this seriously. He manifested, and he got a reaction. And you're talking about blessings. So, like, what, Dionysus? What was he saying? What is the energy that got put out into the world, and how can we help to augment that? You know, you said, Clio, you're in relationship with Dionysus. I have a very primary relationship with Dionysus. So how can we help him to continue to manifest whatever it was that was that message of diversity at the Olympics?
Yes.
It's incredibly important right now. So it's a really interesting question. What was happening there, and how can we continue to augment that?
Did you see? I don't know anything about Eminem. I saw the movie Eighth Mile years ago, and that's all I know about Eminem. But he put out an album now, The Death of Slim Shady or something.
Yeah.
I've been hearing all about it in the magical community that I'm in contact with, so I decided to watch it. And they had a lot of people's reaction. These people were different colors, different nationalities, you know, different backgrounds, different types of music, but they all grew up during a time when Eminem was part of their, I guess, growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all gushing about it. I've never seen so many reactions to a song on YouTube. And his song is about a character who's himself from a long time ago, coming into the present day and seeing how we've become with all the political correctness. And he said, we're like a bunch of Girl Scouts, you know, and then he starts saying offensive things that he knows he's going to get, you know, crap for, but he doesn't care. And, you know, his language was very colorful, and it shocked a lot of people, but people were also nodding to his message.
It should not have shocked them. Anybody who's either seen 8 Mile or, I mean, I remember Eminem, and I always thought he was in his own way, a trailblazer as a white male making his way in a very colorful atmosphere. And he had a pretty rough upbringing.
Yes.
People applauded his acting as well as his singing in 8 Mile, because you think, oh, it's just some rapper. He had a really rough upbringing, and that was a movie about his life. And so, yeah, he played it well, because that was his life, is his life, and he went through a lot of things. And he has gone through, if you want to talk about resurrection, he is resurrected at least twice that I know of. I mean, first when he got himself out of what arguably could be the hellhole that was the 8th Mile in Detroit. And second, I guess he'd had some issues, as so many artists have had, different famous people with addiction, and he got pulled out of that, and he actually came up publicly and restarted. And now, you know, and Slim Shady was one of the characters, personas he portrayed, but he's one of the best writers as a rapper you could find. He just happens to be older than a lot of the others, but he still has a lot of respect.
That he's gotten older. Like, it starts off, he's in a bed with, you presume, a young lady or somebody, and he's actually in bed with two young ladies. But on his dresser, there's Viagra, there's lubricant, there's all sorts of things. And later on throughout the video, he's consistently showing his age, even though his younger self is youthful. And then at the end, he fuses with who he was to become who he now is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I knew nothing about his career. I'm in my 60s, my late 60s. So I passed through that era of listening to music. but it was very powerful. And I thought of Dionysus when he was doing this,
Mhm.
you know, because it's very Dionysian. And now we had things turn around. We had a reversal in politics as well. Things seem to be going in a particularly bleak direction. And then we seem to have a reversal. Now all of a sudden people are positive again, and they're, you know, and they're, I haven't seen so much positive energy and enthusiasm in the political arena in a very long time. And most people I knew were depressed, and they, you know, they were, you know, dreading the future, and now they're happy and they're looking forward to an optimistic future. So this seems to be a time of reversal. And I think that this thing at the Olympics was part of that, you know, just shock us out of the negative reality that we were in, that stuck reality, that gloom and doom reality, and brought in a new day, or the promise of a new day and transformation.
I think that's one of the good Dionysian aspects that we have right now. I mean, we're currently in several retrogrades actually, but I find interesting that just all types of communication and just being awareness of who we are as individuals. I'm just speculating that one of the reasons when you see, you know, that the real Slim Shady and who's getting older represent where a lot of people are heading. And there's a whole generation, mostly Generation X, that would be like, yes, he's one of us. and and if you think about it, the actual individuals from that generation and what things have gone through, the idea of aging from a youth-oriented culture, which is where the world has been for so long, when someone comes out and says, yeah, here's what it's like to get older, here's what it's like to use some things, but it's still okay, you have to have some hope. And there hasn't been a lot of hope for some people for a really long time. So
Right.
I'm very grateful. And now that you have mentioned this, I'm thinking of all the little tiny things um, that have come up that have made people maybe think, you know what, it's not going to be exactly like how you expect. Um, and I'm actually now looking forward to the next several months just to see if we're going to get through the end of the year and still be in this state of wonderment. Because it's almost like there's a box of surprises and it keeps popping open, waiting for the next surprise.
So,
That's, I don't know how, you know. Well, you know those little things that they used to be where you'd open the box and it's like something would pop
yes,
out.
Jack in the
Thank you.
boxes and stuff.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Brandy and Tony? Any thoughts?
That-
I I think that people really need a wake-up call.
Mm.
And who better to wake us up than Dionysus?
Yeah. Do you guys know that there were the closing ceremony of the Olympics was controversial as well? I don't know if you've come across that.
No,
I loved that. That was beautiful. I wish they could have
utopian. I'm like, oh no, more modern.
what part was
utopia.
controversial? I saw that. It was wonderful.
What's controversial?
Clio, I'm
Please let us know.
totally with you. I thought it was absolutely magnificent. So basically, there are accusations that the whole thing was satanic. There was a gorgeous, shiny, cyborgish figure that they referred to as a golden voyager on a voyage through a dystopian future. And at the end of one sequence, he plants the Greek flag. And given all the pearl clutching that's happening on social media, you'd think he planted a flag with an upside down pentagram. So then the next sequence starts up, and he encourages Nike, the goddess of victory, to awaken the Olympian spirit. So Nike is portrayed winged and headless in homage to the votive monument that was originally found on the island of Samothrace or Samothraka.
Yes.
And so it's north of the Aegean Sea. So that particular monument is now known as either the Winged Victory of Samothrace or the Nike of Samothrace. So it's a masterpiece of Greek sculpture from the Hellenistic era. It dates to around 190 BCE, and it's sadly missing its head and its arms. And as we all know, the Christians were vandalizing statues, decapitating them and the like. So it's probably a result of Christian vandalization, although I don't know that for sure. So online, people were saying that it was a satanic headless angel. So this again is another problem which could have been remedied with improved education.
Well, the thing is, that particular statue, many people have seen it. It's been actually shown. I mean, Nike, the brand, the athletic brand, makes a big deal of showing the wings and what it's from, and they actually link to that statue the very description you give if you go look up Nike. So I'm a little bit shocked that that would be something that people have seen. They may not know what it's called, but they know it, they would think it's associated with the shoe brand more than that it's an actual statue of victory for the goddess. I just wonder when you say that. I hadn't seen that yet, but I wasn't paying as much attention. And I wonder if it's a matter of trying to find something that will help with the bubbling under the surface common denomination of a desire for dominionism / Christian nationalism. And I say that because it's coming forth in various aspects, and you have to look to see how their parts are connected, but not everything that's art or everything that is beautiful that comes up that's new and different is going to be something that is anti-Christian. That then becomes in the question of what about the origins of art that we teach or that have been taught, unless you're going to get rid of those, because then you have no beginning.
One of the things I tried to do to address this is having shows on I started with the Archangel Michael, because the Archangel Michael is a letter that's in so many alphabets, spiritually, occult wise, and so forth. So I'm having different people from different groups talking about what or who Archangel Michael is to them, and showing that I put up different images of the Archangel Michael, and this way they're all talking about the Archangel Michael. It's not similar, but it's the same alphabet letter in their systems. It's the same, it's a common symbol in a lot of different systems. And now I'm doing the same for Hermes, starting in a month or two, because Hermes is a letter in many occult alphabets, especially in the West. And now that the West and the East have culturally mixed, because we live in a global community, Hermes is finding his way. There's even like a pop religion that has Hermes as a central character, and has been making cartoons, like animations of Hermes's spiritual adventures back in ancient Greece and Atlantis and so forth. So just to show that what we're talking about is the same thing and yet something different, but we're expressing it in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back in Australia, we had a florist that was using the logo of Hermes. So basically, a young man with a winged helmet, the caduceus, and the winged sandals for delivering flowers.
We have that here too.
Yeah, FTD.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And no one says anything about FTD. It's just like, oh, it was understood. This is a great way to get flowers delivered fast.
Yes.
Nobody complains.
Somebody will just... We're 10 minutes to 10, and I know that some of you needed to go. Are we okay for another 10 minutes or?
Yeah.
Okay, good. One of the things I wanted to ask everybody is, as you know, as I shared, I'm doing a bunch of organizational type things. I don't have a big picture yet, but I have bits and pieces of a bigger picture. And one of the things that I wanted to do was have a show that's like the show that we do now when we're talking about theurgy and related topics, but something talking about, basically taking the Hellenic spirit or the Olympian spirit, and how do you translate that into systems that are in use today? I had a hard time articulating this in words last time, and it sounds like I'm having a hard time articulating it in words now. But I wanted to make that the topic, not so much something from antiquity or something from scholarship or something from our own experiences or so forth, or something from our reading or our studying, but like, how would we as people who represent the Olympian tradition take a stance against some of the things that are happening in the world? or take a stance for some things that need to be happening in the world as an impulse. Like, for instance, some of the organizations I've belonged to stay politically neutral, and others, like some of the Greek organizations, they take stands on things. And it's just basically that they don't approve of this that's happening in the world, or they approve of this that's happening in the world. And then where they don't approve, how do they raise money to support the opposite of what's happening? And if they like it, how do they raise money to support what is happening so it continues to happen? So in Greek, it's called a bouli, which some people pronounce boule, B-O-U-L-E, but it's bouli. And it literally means a council. So I'm not looking for guidance on my decisions. I feel very comfortable in my decisions. I think things through very thoroughly, and I'm always open to feedback. So I'm not that concerned about my ability to steer things into being, but I believe that some things need to be discussed. Some things need to be looked at. Some things we need to take a stand on, regardless of what our individual belief systems happen, to be. But if we feel strongly about something, we should do something positively or negatively because of that.
Agreed. I mean, I can think of several things, if I'm understanding you correctly, as who we are in different parts. For example, work-wise, there's a whole thing that I'm involved with, that I'm proud to be involved with, that looks at diversity and things like that. I don't know. Am I correct? You're asking if we are belonging to different organizations that do that and then take a stance either financially or by public acknowledgement or disparagement of certain things? Is
Sure,
that what you're talking about?
whatever we could do. Like right now, there seems to be a movement in the United States among 30% of the population minimally to take away all rights from women and to force them to breed. Some of the things associated with Plan 2025 have having children is a woman's civic responsibility, and then they can be penalized or jailed. We all know that miscarriages are very common, and but they want to criminalize, and they have in several states. So I believe that statements should be made about that, because that's a horrible thing. I've been trying to get people to vote by posting voting information. I spoke to the League of Women's Voters to see if we can make a show together, and we're still talking about that because they're busy, not busy, but there's interest in doing this. So it'll happen at some, particular point. But, I'm just one person. But as Olympians, I think we should take like a stronger stance on some things and show where we stand, rather than, again, just privately liking or not liking something, or believing or not believing in something. When we have more time, we can discuss it. But is this a topic that you feel worthy of discussion, that we can pick it up when we have more time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Tony has
yeah.
done panels where we talked about what we were doing in the past, and it's not a bad idea to kind of revisit that. And I'm involved in quite a few public and private efforts, right? So there's some really, really private things happening, where people are supporting exactly what you were talking about. The one I can talk about is like showing up for racial justice. I support that group. I support the national group. So it's white people talking to white people about race, because it's our responsibility to do that.
Right.
And they're targeting specific states for education, right? The swing states. So I'm not able to, I don't have the bandwidth to do volunteering, so I give them money. But I attend calls, and they keep us all educated, and I think that's important. As you were talking, Hercules, I was kind of thinking that what's happening in this response to the Olympics is a response to two things. It's a response to the idea of diversity and the idea of people coming together in the world, and it's also a response to the Greek gods. They were specifically invoked, and they were specifically disliked by this whole set of people. So I kind of thought, Greek God Defense League, something like that.
That would sound good.
Yeah.
And not only that, I think some of them, because I know some of the private things, people overlap, and thankfully they're private for a reason, and so people don't speak of them. I try to put as much, I mean, I put it for my column. I never know who reads it. I try to send it out. But my big thing is on democracy right now, and that's probably the next 2 or 3 columns. Kind of like, you know, when my mother died, I think I had 5 columns on death, and but it's worth it. I'm in one of those states that, full disclosure, our governor is the vice presidential vice presidential designated nominate, whatever. Yeah, when I heard that, I was so sorry because I love him.
He's so
And
great.
I don't
He's
want to
so great,
lose
though.
him. It's Tim Waltz, and I don't, because he really has, when they talk about people fighting the fight, and living in a state that has become a refuge against everything that you're talking about. The trad wife thing, I think there has been a movement with a lot of articles on the tradition of the now live-in girlfriend, which I call someone who needs to do something to make sure they can support themselves. But also just various things that come out, like Project 2025, which I have gone through and been reading. The best thing is to let people know and to encourage critical thinking. So in my professional day job, and which I'm doing as a textbook, that is what I'm encouraging, is critical thinking and critical reading, without saying, here's what you read, but actually asking people to question what comes out as an argument, because too many things are given as though everyone is going to be a sheep or lemming, take your pick, and follow along the one who's right in front of you, because that's what happens. And too often, as Tony had mentioned earlier about education, a part of education with regard as being those of an Olympian stance is to make sure that everything is open. And there is a battle against diversity on the idea of the replacement theory. And this is going out on a big, huge limb, but I'm sure people have heard about it. The idea of the replacement theory, whether you personally believe that that's what's happening or not, there are people who do. And I think it's probably the same 30%, maybe a little more. And then when they come up and do that, it overlaps. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. But because of things you don't like are all overlapping, then it becomes a larger force. And that's what something like a Greek defense league will be lovely.
So let's do that when we have more time. And thank you to all of you for being here today. I learned a lot. I enjoyed listening to your thoughts, and you've given me lots to contemplate in my morning and evening meditations. How can people get in touch with you? How can they find your work and get involved, hopefully, in some of the things that you're doing? And we'll start with Tony again.
Easiest way to contact me is through Facebook, either my personal page or my author page. And I also have a blog through Patheos called Holistic Spirituality.
Thank you so very much, Tony. Brandy.
BrandyWilliamsAuthor.com, and my blog, Star and Snake, on Patheos also.
And how about your book publishing company?
Mnemosyne Press. It starts with an M, M-N-E. Mnemosyne Press. It's or Mnemosyne, I think Hercules would say. The Greek goddess of, yeah, the Greek goddess of memory. But just go on Amazon and look for my name. That's probably easier.
Thank you, Brandy. Great to see you today. And Clio?
They can reach me at my Facebook page, personal, just DM me, Clio Ajana. And also for the Wild Hunt, first Saturday of the month, usually, I'm under as a columnist.
Thanks to everybody, and thanks to our wonderful.
So, Hercules, how can people find you?
That's right.
You can find me on.
No one ever asks you.
You can look on YouTube under Hercules Invictus. You can look under Block Talk Radio under Hercules Invictus. You can look at Facebook under Hercules Invictus. I recently went back to LinkedIn and something else, LinkedIn and Pinterest. So in a month or so, you can look me up over there as well. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.